What is up? Happy football season. It is here. Welcome to the Night Shift Podcast. It is Jeff Sharon here along with you. I got Kyle Nash, I got Andrew Bluecock, I got Bryson Turner in our UCF 2023 football. We'll call this our football preview show here. All right, so it's been a minute since we've done one of these shows. We're ramping them back up for football season here. I want to do something, guys, as you guys know, I want to do it a little bit different this year. I want everything to be much more relaxed, much more free-flowing. Within reason. Just keep it within reason, Andrew. Okay? Just
why am I the bad guy?
You know why?
I don't have to answer that. Anyone else can drop into our comments and answer that question. That'll be your first. That'll be the first question we would love to hear from you on the Night Shift Podcast. You can send us
because they're all going to want me to shut up.
Send us all your questions on our various social media pages. We are, of course, part of Black and Gold Banneret. And all right, so I want to dive right in. We're gonna keep it. We're used to, guys. We've done like 2-hour shows, sometimes more. We're keeping this bad boy to 1 hour. Okay, we're recording this on Thursday, August the 10th, and it is official. UCF is in the Big 12 Conference as they prepare for their opener against Kent State. 3 weeks from today. Man, I'm getting ahead of myself now. I'm like, that's how ready I am for this.
You're excited, okay. Jeff Sharon.
Okay, I'm ready. I was going to show up to the stadium a week early, being like, where is everybody? Let's go play. UCF is, the journey begins. This is what we've been looking forward to for some of us for decades. All right. And now UCF gets its first chance to really strut its stuff in a major, power conference. And I guess I want to start with you, Kyle, the student of the SOTG on Twitter for the student.
The elder statesman of the crew.
The elder statesman of the crew. Is there a sense from your travails around the facility as camp is underway that does it feel any different that UCF is in this conference now?
Absolutely. And it's less from what's on the campus to where I'm hearing some of the typical, how you say, rebuffing of UCF fanhood. It's not just, in some of the lighter places that you would find when you see Cincinnati fans or, the South Florida people such as they were. To see some of this stuff pop up on Texas pages, like on West Virginia pages, things like that. Like, to be clear, there was so much renewed stuff about, UCF declared a championship. That's not real. Like, first of all, catch up. 6 years ago. Like, it was to the point where I actually had to reiterate I don't want to say rant, but an explanation of my interpretation of the 2017 national championship, such that it is, granted, as the student of the game, of course, on my student of the game pod, but like, I actually felt the need to have to do that 6 years later because it's coming up again. And seeing that hit the mainstream such that it is really kind of the big indicator that not only is there more recognition, by the way, UCF is getting ranked higher in all sorts of stuff too, like preseason rankings, recruiting, all sorts of stuff that would have been, I would say, knocked down a few pegs in the past. UCF is out there in the how you say, the zeitgeist, if you will, in a fashion that's not like before.
Here's what I know about that, Kyle Nash. You know what one of our highest performing articles over the last month has been?
It's going to be an interesting question you're going to answer, I'm sure.
UCF's national championship explained.
Stop.
That thing got a bump, man. It's on our most read every day for like the last 3 weeks.
I mean,
I don't know who shared it. I don't know where that came from, but it's making the rounds.
What can I say except you're welcome?
I still remember you showing me that before I joined the Banneret and I met you for like the second time. I remember you showing me that article.
Yeah, because I had to. Yeah, well, I mean, it's evergreen content. Look, facts is facts. Okay, Drew, what about you? I mean, do you sense from? I mean, the sense from fandom is like, let's go. But like, where are the expectations for this year? Because I've been, folks, I've been talking to. It's kind of all over the place.
Well,
yeah.
So what are they? High, low, better than what they were projected? By the way, UCF was picked 8th in the Big 12 Football Media preseason poll. Texas was number 1, followed by Kansas State, Oklahoma, Texas Tech. Defending CFP runners-up TCU were picked 5th. Baylor, Oklahoma State, then UCF. Go ahead, Drew.
I would say surprisingly tempered. Normally, most fans are, we're going to run the tables, blah, blah, blah. No, a lot of it is low end of 5 wins, high end of 8 wins. 7 and 5 is a very realistic possibility. However, you look at this team, there's a lot of question marks, not so much if they're good enough, but if they did enough. Going in last year, this team had terrible depth. Lagged depth in multiple positions. Well, that's what they focused on during this offseason, was bringing in the depth. They did it in the wide receivers. They did it in the linebackers. They did it in the defensive backfield. All these areas, they retooled the offensive line. All areas that needed work. Either on the front end, like the offensive line, or the back end, like some defensive backfield. They addressed how thin the team was. Early in the season, when they were healthy, they could run with anybody. But as the season wore on, people got hurt. You saw it with John Rice Plumlee got injured. Things just did not move. And obviously, you're going up against the Big 12, and fans are understanding that this is not a one-season fix. This is going to take a little bit of time. And so while the Knights could surprise a lot of people, I think they're very, the fans are very tempered on their expectation. They expect a bowl game, but they're not expecting to a run at the conference championship like they did every year in the American.
On the, I should note on that preseason poll, Drew, UCF was the highest of the new entrants.
Oh, they're the most ready by far. It's not even close.
Also, as a side note, did you see the coaches poll, Jeff? Because on that one,
I missed that one.
They have them 6th. I think, little inside baseball. I think Eric put in Slack here just before we went on the air here. But yeah, they're 6th. UCF is 6th in the coaches poll. So that's, I'm not.
I think it's reasonable.
I think. What's that, buddy?
It's reasonable.
As well. We'll get into expectations later, I think, as a panel. I'll let the host dictate that, but I think that's an acceptable word you're using, yes.
Now, Athlon had us 9th. CBS has an over-under. They gave us 7 wins. The losses were K-State, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas Tech. All of those are road games. So they got us undefeated at home, which, my thing is, get to a bowl game. Don't get embarrassed, get to a bowl game, right? But you're right. The calculation is totally different.
Don't
Jeff,
think about you. Am I right?
Think about those games, though. Kansas, with arguably the most electric quarterback in the conference, Jalen Daniels. Texas Tech is the dark horse of the conference, who's expected to make a lot of noise. Kansas State, returning conference champions. Oklahoma, when they have their people healthy, they can put up points. And there's some guy behind center that may have a personal thing that he wants to work on during that game.
I think that's
I know that there are some other guys on this side of the thing that have a score to settle too.
I'm with Jeff on that. I think some people will try to uncork in that game.
Well, I think it's going to go both ways. I think there's emotions are going to start getting in the way, and as we know, Dylan Gabriel tends to shrink in those big games, but that's neither here nor there.
I don't think they're even focusing on that at the moment, at least from what they were telling us, after practice. They're just waiting for Kent State at the moment. And
they're not going
to get to it.
Of course they're going to stay
they are,
there.
Bryson. Hey, by the way, that comment you made about Gabriel there, Drew, you really socked it to him. Anyways, Jeff.
Oh, God. All right. We had to get one in. Congratulations. There's your one, Kyle. I will say this. The way I view it is there's the calendar in the facility, and then there's the calendar on the fridge in your dorm.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
On the facility, the date that's circled is August 31st, can't stay. But when they go back home to the dorm, all right, and that calendar, and they look at the calendar hanging on the side of the fridge in the kitchen, you better believe that Oklahoma game is circled in red Sharpie. If these guys are one thing, say what you will. I feel like the level of competition within the player, within the roster, within the locker room, They understand the task at hand. The guy ahead of him, the guy at the helm of all that, trying to keep the trying to direct the troops in the proper direction, is Gus Malzahn. So I'll come back to you, Kyle, and then I want to go to you, Bryson. Gus giving up the play calling duties this year to new offensive coordinator and former UCF quarterback Darin Hinshaw. I think it's people forgotten a lot of the things that like Gus has had to deal with both on and off the field over the past couple of years, and I think part of that was reason why he delegated some of those responsibilities to Darin. We'll get more onto Darin in a little bit, but how is Gus feeling this year? How does he seem to? He'll never let that on. He's the kind of guy who's like, well, that's none of that's any excuse, but and I get that and respect it, but how is he feeling? How is he looking coming into this year in doing I should say not doing something that he's been very used to doing for a very long time?
Right, and Bryson, fill in where you can as I go here too, because you've talked to him more in the summer here. But in the spring, I got the impression from him that it's something he's kind of accepted as fact, and what he's kind of done as any competitive guy would do that has not only the ability but the capacity to write a book on how to do particular offenses. Right, if you're going to be that committed to do something to where you can achieve that, you're going to be when you have a new goal, you're going to focus on that. Gus Malzahn is doing historical things in recruiting class rankings for UCF. I know that as far as the product on the field, it doesn't necessarily align, but what it does show, it is he is embracing getting into the politic and to that part of the house of recruitment like never before. He was always a good recruiter. Now that's going to be basically air quotes his life. And listen, that's not a Gus Malzahn unique occurrence. Whether I'm talking to former offensive lineman Jordan Johnson, who is now in Oklahoma State coaching intern, or OG covering UCF sports Brandon Hellwig, everybody will tell you that the role of the head coach is more an executive than anything like ever before. And listen, I know it's not going to be Jeff's favorite comp, but the greatest mullet in the country, Mike Gundy, according to Jordan Johnson, was that executive. And I think that's the model for success here. And that's where I kind of take it, where Gus, based on his temperament, when we talked to him about it in the spring, Gus understands that that's his role and he's ready to kick its butt.
So he's more of a CEO, is what you're saying. Yeah, right. Bryson, what was your impression?
My impression is that this is something that I think he felt like it was his time to do that. Now, he if you remember back in 2017 when he was at Auburn, he gave up play calling for that season, and it turned out pretty pretty okay until they ran into a certain quarterback.
It was.
But with all these new changes in college football, with having to deal with the NIL and everything else going on in the college football world at the moment, having somebody that is able to, focus a little more on those off the field issues that are slowly becoming as big a news items at all the time as the on the field stuff is, it's important to have somebody that's able to focus on those matters. And I think Gus is very well equipped to do those things as sort of a CEO style head coach. I mean, don't forget, obviously he came from a high school coaching background. So from the recruiting end, he knows these guys because he's coached players just like them before at that specific age group. So you have that. Then you have that. And so I think this is the role that just suits him well at this point in his career, and I think now is the time where he felt ready to do that.
Jeff, I got to put this cherry on top too, because everything Bryson said's correct, but it's not accounting for one other thing, and especially accounting for Gus's age. Listen, he calls himself old, even when he's in the building.
He's only 57 though.
Come on, that's not that old nowadays.
Shut up, Drew.
You're almost there.
The guy that says exactly. The guy that makes old jokes every 30 seconds going to try to say that ish. Whatever. The punchline's this though, guys. Remember. A guy with a coaching tree of his size, has been in the game as long enough, who has every excuse to basically do follow the stereotype based on stereotypes, right? To pull a full Dabo Sweeney, hey, this is not good for college. No, he leans into that ish and sets new trends. He puts QR codes on jerseys. He puts Twitter handles on jerseys. That Deion effing Sanders is now copying in Colorado. If you're a dude that's that much of a leader before you even became the CEO, you're qualified. Period. Point blank.
Well, he sets trends. He helped mainstream the no huddle offense. I mean, come on, he redefined college football offense.
I mentioned the goddamn book, Drew. What do you want?
Yeah, but there's people who don't know what the book is.
That's fair.
We got some sound from Gus.
This was from Football Media Day from the Nicholson Fieldhouse.
All right, let's go ahead and listen to that.
The responsibility of a head coach this day and time, every day it seems like there's something more that you need to do. So, we did something very similar. I did something very similar in 2017 when Chip Lindsey took over the play calling, and it was more of just the head coach. We were very successful that year. I'm going to try to keep that same blueprint. But like you said, with all of the NIL and everything that goes with that, it's really almost like a GM. Like some of my role turns into more like a GM in the NFL. So, yeah, that definitely is a big part.
All right, Gus Malzahn. Now, obviously, the big thing that we, talked about here is we're going to switch over to the offense. We're going to talk offense, defense, special teams real quick, and then the schedule. But the big story here is on offense. And this is an offense that was one of the, let's face it was one of the nation's best last year. But I think we all agree that it wasn't as consistent game in and game out as I'm sure they were hoping. In comes Darin Hinshaw. We know about his credentials as a player at UCF. We know that he's coached all around college football, SEC multiple times. As an offensive assistant, he was an analyst here under Gus. Left, came back. Now he's running the show. He's calling the plays. One of our observations from the spring game, and Drew, I want you to get in on this when you can, is it seemed to me, and I think it seemed to you guys, that there was more of an emphasis on throwing downfield, and the quarterbacks, particularly JRP, when he made his way over from the baseball field, staying in the pocket and going through your options. Was that it? So one spring of that, now we're doing it in the fall. Drew, what do you expect from Darin Hinshaw in the offense?
Well, I expect a quicker offense, and part of that, not only
how is that possible?
Well, it's not going to
trust me, from the guy who has to rattle off the information in between plays. How is it possible to be even faster?
Well, it's not going to be hyper fast, which was, in my opinion, a little too fast, because if you went 3 and out, your defense is gassing badly.
And then somewhere Frost fast is in there, but we could have that conversation later, brother.
Frost was a little more dynamic. He slowed things down as needed. I think he handled play clock management a little better than Josh Heupel's offense did. But another topic for another day. With the improved rotational players on this team, you can actually play quicker. You can choose your spots. You get a first down. All right, you keep all your same guys on the field. You run another play. Okay, second and long, pull back, do your substitutions, and get that second set of the second unit out there. UCF has at least 6 very good wide receivers, including their transfers coming in, so you can rotate those guys out. You have 4 very talented running backs that are very interchangeable as far as getting in there and being able to make a difference. You have offensive linemen that can move around as needed. One of the things that Coach Hand has always been big on is about cross-training players at different positions. So you can move things around and be able to keep things fresh, help speeds the game up. By having John Rice Plumlee stay in the pocket a little bit more, it's all about durability, because we've seen what he can do when he tucks and runs. But we also see what happens when something goes wrong and
didn't he say tackled. Also that he'd been hurt quite a bit through last year? He kind of let that drop a little bit.
Well, yeah, once that
we all knew it, but he would never let on. But we all knew he was banged up.
Yeah, he got hurt against Cincinnati and never fully recovered. I mean, he had that great game against Tulane, but he never really recovered from the Cincinnati injury. And you can see the play just kind of trickled down. Once he got hurt against USF, I mean, there was no coming back from that. He was a hobbled player those last 2 games, and the team suffered for it. They didn't have the tools to adjust to it.
This year, Kyle, or last year, I should say, UCF was 16th in total offense in the country, 9th in rushing, 56th in passing. Do we expect much of the same this year, or do we think that those rankings are going to start flipping a little bit?
If you believe that Hinshaw's had the impact on JRP's passing ability and patience and touch, then yeah, it will go up some on the passing side. But I don't necessarily. I mean, the total offense national record should probably rise, but what I think you'll definitely see more importantly is more of a balance. And listen, Drew has mentioned it plenty here on the show and about depth. He has an article already out there about it on blackandgoldbanneret.com. Bing! There's depth is a main focus for any team that's not only changing conference, but changing, classifications, if you will. Brought to be a thing of the past pretty soon with all the conference movement, separate conversation. But when you're going from G5 to P5 especially, having more depth is super important. And in the case of the quarterback position, though, here with JRP, such as we mentioned it, there isn't as much. So your other option is to do things to keep him from getting hurt. That's where the bigger passing comes from. I think you mentioned the spring game, Jeff. I think that was more about getting practice where practice was needed. But I think as an overall philosophy, not only will you keep JRP in the game, literally and figuratively, for longer, when he does break off, if they're passing more, it'll be an even bigger surprise and a higher chance of success for the lottery ticket, such as we talked about it last year.
I missed my cue. So, all right, I'm not going to miss it again. Let's hear from Darin Hinshaw on the progress that he's made on with the offense, and in particular JRP.
Just with confidence, his confidence in the offense and playing quarterback. He's not looking to run around and go take on the whole defense and go fight them to the death. He's not doing that anymore. He's playing quarterback, and it's fun. It's exciting. He's making great decisions, quick decisions. He's got his eyes on his progressions. He's understanding what where everybody's supposed to be. He's trusting the receivers. He's trusting the offense, where he's not worried about where they're going to be or what's going to happen, and he's looking at defenses, and he's reading defenses quicker, and he's getting the ball where it needs to be. And again, his progression these next 10 days of practice, because install's just about done, and now really start to really fine-tune. The old TVs, when we had the top channel, I know nobody probably remembers that, and then you had the fine-tune deal at the bottom, and, you get it on the channel, and then you turn that knob. We're there with John Rice where we're fine-tuning. We're fine-tuning and getting ready to go so that we can go be perfect in everything that we do.
Bryson, you had a comparison that you wanted to mention.
Yes. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting when Darin Hinshaw was talking about JRP is, again, how making sure he prevents himself from being hurt. That's something that JRP's talked about, something that Darin Hinshaw is clearly trying to emphasize with them. And I think I know exactly what they're trying to do in NFL terms. I think that Darin Hinshaw wants JRP to be less RG3 and Michael Vick and more Fran Tarkenton. How about that for a little reference there?
I mean, maybe you'll want somebody who's a more accurate passer, but I see what you're trying for.
The idea is that I think the idea is that you want to be able to let JRP use his scrambling, because he is mobile, and that is a very important strength to him. But at the same time, you want to make sure that he's able to improve on his passing, so that way he lessens the likelihood that he gets himself into these situations that get him hurt. And what
maybe a better. Sorry, Bryson. I was going to say maybe a better comparison would be less
Kyler Murray and more
less Kyler Murray, more
Russell Carrington Wilson.
Well, no, or Russell Wilson. I was going to say Josh Allen.
I mean, again, you would like a more accurate passer, but enough from the Giants fan.
Well, no, he's been pretty accurate the last couple of years, hasn't he? So.
The funny thing is, you mentioned Michael Vick was mentioned. Michael Vick was unique in the fact that he was more accurate when he was throwing on the run.
Correct.
I mean,
Right.
do you have a,
JRP is very similar like that, actually, Drew.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He is much more comfortable throwing on the run than I feel like he is in the pocket.
and that's where the big difference has to be now. Darin Hinshaw was offensive coordinator of UAB last year, and that team set records across the board in passing yards, rushing yards, yards per game. They were, for UAB, they were an offensive juggernaut compared to their previous years.
Ran the ball a lot, though, Drew.
Say what?
They ran the ball a lot, though, Drew, that year.
Well, it's about balance. I mean, if you do one thing all the time, they're going to key in on it. So you got to have a semblance of balance. But with the talent that UCF has at those skilled positions, they can run the ball heavy. They've got a stable of running backs that can split the load very well.
UCF has a tradition of stables of running backs. Can we just get that out of the way?
Yeah, I mean, it really is a tradition at this point. The wide receiving core is very talented and runs 6 players deep. I mean, you've got a full 2 sets of units right there between your flankers and your slot. Between the starters and these transfers that have come in that may actually potentially supplant someone because they're pretty good.
Hey, Drew, as a quick aside, too, we talked about UAB running the ball a lot. Were they doing it with their quarterback or were they doing it with running backs?
Largely running backs. They had McBride, who's now in the NFL, I think with Minnesota. And he's pretty good. And when you look at UCF's running backs, I mean, RJ Harvey, yeah, he's pretty good. Johnny Richardson, good change of pace scat back. DeMarcus Bowman, he's pretty good. Jordan McDonald is a wrecking ball on wheels. This is a very talented crew.
And I noticed, by the way, it's still amazing without even accounting for the fact that Zay Bowser is no longer a factor.
Yeah, and Isaiah, don't get me wrong, Isaiah Bowser, very good running back. But the way these players have developed, considering how good RJ Harvey is, he may not have the complete size of Bowser, but he can hit. Yes. He won't carry guys, but that's what Jordan McDonald's for.
Correct.
And I think he will be. Now, it may take him another half year to really grow into it, but he becomes that bruiser that Bowser was. The one thing you lose
had.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Drew. I was going to say, sorry for interrupting, but I was going to say last year, UAB had, now you mentioned Dwayne McBride, who ran for 1,700 yards last year. He had another guy who nearly ran for 1,000 in Jermaine Brown Jr.
Change of pace.
So enough said. And there's no reason why UCF can't have 2, maybe even 3 players at least 600 yards apiece.
That's 2,600 rushing yards between those 2 guys.
With also an added advantage of a lottery ticket at quarterback running the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, all right. So, I'm still on the fence. I still feel like we're going to see a lot of running the ball. I think that the way UCF passes is going to be different. I don't think they're going to pass more, but I think they're going to hit. They're going to attack differently through the air. I still
just
think,
remember,
like,
Jeff, a lot of those runs were a result of pass plays that just didn't go right.
Would you accept higher accuracy rather than less passing per se?
Oh yeah, because higher accuracy. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you why this is, because higher accuracy leads to moving the chains.
There you go.
And especially on third down. Not that UCF was bad on third downs last year. They were 16th in the country in third down conversions at 46%. But but you were talking about keeping the defense off the field, Drew. That's how you do it, because remember, last year the defense was 62nd in third down conversion, and the defense also gave up 282 first downs. That was 103rd in the country. And defenses give up first downs when they're tired.
Oh yeah, third and short and all that. They would give up a lot. It's like, I write my notes as the game's going on. They can't get off the field. They can't get off the field. That was a recurring theme, and it wore them down.
Mm-hmm.
That was rough sailing in that Navy game.
Yeah, they were 5th. UCF was 5th in the country in red zone defense last year.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the other thing, the flip side of that, and I want to touch upon this real quick. One of the keys, and I think this is what really hurt UCF last year, particularly late in the year. 109th in the country in red zone offense.
Well, that's where accuracy is more important.
There you go.
Accuracy,
You have a
yes.
much smaller margin of error.
Yeah.
Smaller window.
Yeah, smaller window to get to. And, when the defense tightens up, how do you attack it? I think that's going to be, when you have less ground in order to, to use, I think that's going to be a real key.
And
Now,
Jeff, how much of it was opponents knowing the run was coming because they couldn't trust JRP or whatever backup was in because JRP was hurt?
I think I don't know if that was part of it, because I think UCF's primary goal once they got to the red zone was just go to your strength, running the ball. It's not that they didn't trust JRP, because they did trust him with running the ball.
I meant as a passer.
I just thought that last year they were what I don't know exactly what they were running, but it just felt like they were just let's pound the rock, let's get it in there.
Right.
And there was a little bit of that said, but I don't think that was the reason why. I just think they were like, this is our strength, let's ride it.
Well, there, a lot of when you start getting the tight feel and you start getting the collapsing coverage on defense against the line, the offensive line struggled when they were being stacked against, and that's where they really could not move the ball. Save for Isaiah Bowser, he was really able to kind of carry his own, but a lot of those runs, there was a lot of off tackle, outside, broken runs by JRP that really padded some of those stats. You don't get those opportunities in the short field, and the offensive line was exposed for a lack of explosiveness, which was a recurring theme throughout the year.
I think it's partially that, and I think one of the other things was, and this is nothing against UCF staff of wide receivers who are very good, but they are very much vertical downfield guys.
Right.
And I don't think JRP had a guy like you guys remember Brandon Johnson in 2022, who was just who was a red zone fiend. I mean, whenever Mike Key needed something, that's where he looked.
Brandon Johnson, Marlon Williams.
Yeah, Marlon was there too. Yeah, I mean, no doubt about it. So that was just a quick thought. But wide receiver staff is going to be a little bit deeper this year as well, and with the recruits coming in the pipeline, even deeper as time goes by.
I just want to point out real quick that UCF has one receiver, I believe it was on the Bilenikoff Award watch list, and it's not the guy you're thinking of. It's the transfer. I'm going to mess up his name, but Corey Gamage. I'm terrible. I'd mess up my own name if I didn't hear it all the time. But he's the transfer from Marshall. He's the one on the watch list, not Javon Baker or Kobe Hudson. So it just shows you how deep this wide receiver room really is. I mean, some studs have entered the building.
I want to get over to the defensive side of the ball, because we talked about them. It was. That the defense is going to be at a disadvantage given how UCF plays at some respect. One thing that I did like, though, about how Gus managed the offense is that he does know how to, as I call it, ride the throttle. He can go, hypo fast, but there were occasions last year where when they needed to burn some clock, they burned some clock. Now, they had the upfront guys to do it. That helps out the defense. And we talked about how good they were in the red zone. But between the 20s, UCF on defense, got off to a strong start, but then faded. Now, granted, part of that could have been the schedule. But they finished the season last year 68th in total defense at 380 yards per game. New defensive coordinator Addison Williams is in the house now. My sense, Kyle, is that this is the biggest question mark coming into the season on the team, particularly when it comes from a depth perspective. No,
you're talking about the defensive line being the
defensive line, defense in general. Yes.
Well, going into say like the spring and such, I would have taken it to be as the linebackers, but to Drew's point, depth was a big deal. And listen, in the afternoon before the evening where we're recording this, we actually talked to Addison Williams about depth and which unit he thought was deeper it gained the most depth, if you will, going into this season and right now here in the scrimmaging process?
What group do you feel like their depth has increased the most significantly?
I would say linebacker, because that's the position that going into the spring ball and after taking over as defense coordinator, I knew that we needed to ask the guys at their spot. And we did not get any transfers in January, which in the end it worked out better because we've had guys like Walter Yates, Cam Moore. They were able to get those live reps, 300, maybe 400 reps over the course of the spring. And then now you add a guy like Ron Davis and Isaiah Paul that have played a lot of college football. Now you go, instead of having 1 or 2 linebackers, now you go all of a sudden have 5 or 6 linebackers. So I think that's the spot where the depth has grown the most.
So you hear Coach Williams here say that it's the linebacker position that gained the most depth. So because that's what occurred, and listen, needing linebacker help is kind of a consistent thing. It's not blamed on anything in particular other than the fact that linebackers are a very important part of the defense. As the student of the game, I've made the argument that linebackers are the most important part of a defensive team. Just ask several historical Steeler teams. But the punchline is this: because they've had a line of linebacker transfers, Tatum Bethune, for example, coming to mind, they've actually been able to bring a lot of other guys in the building. And Coach Williams, later in that same interview, which you could check it out on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube page, subscribe while you're there, please. He also mentions too, thank you, Jeff. He also mentions there too that while they didn't have as many summer transfers, it gave opportunities for guys who were there to actually beef themselves up in terms of getting reps and experience and getting right. So where I would have had the linebackers as the weakness at one point, because of hearing these facts and moving forward with it, I'm kind of with you. The D, specifically the defensive end spot. No disrespect to Josh Saliskar and those starters, but that's where we need to see more of that rotation. I feel good about Lee Hunter and Ricky Barber in the middle. It's those edges we need to see some stuff front. It can't just be Josh, the only one that's making things move or intimidating quarterbacks from the front four.
Well, Kyle, we have been hearing some good stuff from players and coaches about Malachi Lawrence, that the redshirt sophomore defensive end right there, that he could potentially be somebody to watch to kind of pair with Josh Saliskar on the end there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one of the things that the defense is set up for is to have flexibility. So you've got your 3 traditional down linemen, an end, and 2 tackles, but they have a tweener, a linebacker defensive end hybrid that can go back. Big Cat Bryant did it a couple years ago.
Correct.
UCF's looking at look at Sean Peterson, who is the transfer from FIU. He's going to be one of those guys who's going to be pegged to really have to kind of play that tweener role. But to kind of hit home what Kyle said about the improved depth, they may not have hit so hard on the defensive transfer portal, but the guys they brought in were quality players.
Great point.
From Georgia, DeCorian Patterson, the defensive back from Middle Tennessee, really good players that are probably going to start and make an impact. Not only to add on to players like Jason Johnson, who, by the way, is on the Butkus watch list.
Deservedly so, by the way. That dude was a find. Holy moly.
If UCF's in a position where Walter Yates doesn't have to start and he can be part of the second unit, this shows how good this unit's becoming.
Yeah. Drew, what do you want to see in the end result? Because obviously now the schedule's a lot different. We're dealing with I know, but hear me out here.
Thanks, Marcelo.
This is where we look at this is where we really have to look at the fact that we're in the Big 12 now. These offenses go for 500, 600 yards a game on average. Do you want to see the defense stand pat with where they were in relation to the rest of college football this year? Or do you need to see improvement upon what we saw last year?
Well, if statistically, if their stats stayed the same, they did pretty good. You're going to be going up against better competition, offenses that are designed to score and put up a lot of yards. The Big 12 is the place where defenses go to die. So if you're able to maintain where you are, that's pretty good.
Drew, if I could use a less morbid version, okay? There are 3 things that are certain in this world: death, taxes, betting the over on the Big 12.
Well, I used to say it was kind of like the cell phone coverage at at the bounce house, but they're working on that. So I guess UCF's defense has to work on it too to maintain a degree of
that's been worked on. That's been worked on.
Now, when there's 44,000 fans in the stands, we'll know for sure if it really worked.
Well, let's also not forget about the kind of the mandate that we got from Gus about working on end of game situation. Because you talk about how the Big 12 is where defenses go to die, but that also means that there's a lot of close games in the Big 12, and with the offense, I mean, we all know about like 4-minute and 2-minute offensive drives. We've seen them and glorify them all the time, but on the defensive end in those types of situations, that's where I think the Big 12 is really the more crucial look in a Big 12 game, because a lot of those games are going to be really close. It's going to be up to these defensive players to stop that.
Well, remember, that comes back to depth, because that's where the fourth quarter happens, and that's why UCF always struggled against Navy, because Navy is designed to wear you down, and then in the fourth quarter they just punch you in the face. It happened each of the last 2 times that they played them. But UCF looked okay in first 2 quarters. Fourth quarter, the wheels falls off because they wore you down. Same idea with the Big 12 offense. They just hit you, because that's what they're designed to do. And your defensive backfield is worn out by the end of the game, and you found more religion than Swiss cheese.
Drew, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but guys like Jemias Pittman, dudes from the 2017 team, would even tell you that the guys that were most difficult to face in the trenches were in fact Navy. That very reason you're talking.
Yeah.
Now they can't cut block the same way that poor Pittman had to deal with, but
correct.
they still you run the ball constantly. I mean, it's just going to wear you out. That's just the nature of the beast. That's why Isaiah Bowser was so dangerous in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. You know what else is really important in the fourth quarter of close, high-scoring games? Special teams.
Boom.
And UCF seems to have found the answer to some questions at the place kicker position with Colton Boomer, who missed only 1 field goal last year. He was 14 for 15.
I mean, should that count, Jeff? Wasn't that the 60-something yarder?
No, I thought it was from 54. I can't remember.
It was still pretty far.
It was long. I think it would have been a season. I think it would have been a season long. But
easily.
Some injury questions this year for Colton. Is he going to be okay? Punter's pretty much wrapped up with Melbourne Australian Mitch McCarthy, who is 6'5". You want to talk about you math nerds out there? Mitch McCarthy knows a little thing about angular momentum, and he can get a lot of it going on that foot when you're 6'5".
Science.
Yes. The one thing though that UCF last year I thought struggled with compared to the year before was in the kick return game. Not as explosive as the year prior. Kyle, well, actually, I'm going to start with Drew here, because Drew has, I think, a little bit more special teams experience, being a long snapper and whatnot, knowing the kicking game as well. Where is your biggest concern right now? Is it Boomer's injury? Is it the return game? Is it something else?
Well, obviously losing Alex Ward, it hurts. Say what you want. The long snapper can make or break a kick easily. A bad snap leads to a bad hold, leads to a bad kick.
Bill Belichick agrees with you, by the way, Drew.
Absolutely, and I'm trying to take my personal bias out of that statement.
Okay,
but you can't.
But I can't because God bless the long snapper.
Yes, sir.
But the truth is, it's a new starter, so there's the chance of something going wrong there. I mean, Alex Ward was really good. I mean, this guy was as consistent can be. And I hope he latches on somewhere and plays more, because that kind of consistency is hard to find. You can find guys in the NFL that make more mistakes than Alex did during his last couple seasons at UCF. The other thing that needs to be remembered is the returning game is probably not going to change all that much. You still have Townsend as your punt returner, most likely Johnny Richardson as your kickoff returner. Amari Johnson's back; he should be involved as well, because I mean he has a lot of knowledge as a kick returner.
He also should help out the wide receiver game. We missed him last year. I thought that he would have been.
They needed his
a big help in that.
They needed his leadership on the field. I think he would have been the perfect fourth wideout for this team.
Yeah, and he was just getting going too.
Yeah, but you know what? If you followed him on Twitter at all, he had a very positive attitude leading towards this season of I'm going to make it back. I'm going to get back. And now it's time for him to, I don't want to say put up, but it's time to let all that build up be applied. I would like to see him as the primary kick returner because he's not as fast as Richardson, but I think he plays the angles better. Richardson's, I think, runs better from the line of scrimmage as a running back who can make those outside runs. But I think Amari Johnson just sees the field a little bit better from the kickoff point of view, and I think that'll help a little bit on the average. Now, I don't expect UCF to have kick returns for touchdowns. I think they lack the explosiveness there. But, I mean, if you can at least get to the 30-yard line on a consistent basis, you did pretty good.
I mean, Drew, the tradition they had leading up to it, Mike Hughes, AK, Adrian Killen's getting involved, the late Otis Anderson, all those guys were such a big deal, and they still haven't found anything like it since.
No, not at all. I mean, you're not going to find the next Quincy McDuffie lying around.
A note on kick returns, UCF last year 90th in the country.
That tracks.
Kickoff returns. Tied for 52nd in punt returns.
That's better than I would have thought.
Yeah, that's better. Well, I think the two touchdowns that UCF had.
They also changed returners mid-year.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Because of some mistakes. I think Townsend being the guy, not being a true freshman anymore, is going to help in that area because he's got good explosiveness and he has good vision. I just think at times he lost focus on the wrong thing. Led to a couple muff punts. But I think the offseason will really help him out.
Are we worried about Colton?
No.
From what I understand, he was beat up in the spring, but from what I understand, he's okay now.
Okay.
Drew, I want to try to assuage your concerns a little bit about the long snapper because I heard you talking about losing Alex Ward and all that, and one of the reasons that I think that UCF addressed having a new starter is they went out and got Gage King from Arizona State from the transfer portal, and he's been long snapping with Arizona with him for a while. And Jay Feely, the former NFL kicker Jay Feely, has called him like an NFL quality long snapper before.
That is true.
One thing that's relieving about that, Drew, is it's not like you have to learn a new system when it comes to long snapping.
No, but there's still a system to it. There's a cadence there. You have to build the chemistry, and there are some silent motions that are used to determine. Because I mean, when you're snapping the ball, you're looking straight down, behind you, and you see obviously the kicker or the punter, and if it's in a punt, you see the up men behind you. That's it. So I mean, there's a degree of chemistry, and if there's any trickeration or anything there based on reads, long snapper can't read it. So the guys behind him have to read it for him. Now
that's kind of Jeff's point.
Yeah.
Well, that's
it's not like you're going from the air raid to the spread option.
No, but I mean, you have to build the trust and the chemistry with the other players there. That doesn't happen overnight.
All right, so that takes us over to some of the other things that we wanted to talk about just heading into the season. Now we've waxed poetic about the schedule from before when it dropped. I just want to go back and just ask each of you real quick, which games do you have circled on your calendar and why? Kyle, I'll start with you.
Well, I mean, I feel like, my fat man bias is going to come into play here. But for me, it's November 11th. And no, it's not what you're thinking, Jeff. It's not the most beautiful mullet in the nation.
Well, it is the most beautiful mullet in the nation.
That's accurate, but that's not the main reason. It's going to be because you won't be there, Drew. Kidding. I'm joking. No.
That's also another reason.
Correct. That's only 5. So, no, but for me, the main reason is going to go rock across the way pregame and give a hug to my guy, Jordan Johnson, who will be coaching on the other side, and then tell him how weird he looks in orange, but then console him in the fact that also Mackenzie Milton is wearing orange this year somewhere else. So there's that.
Space game, by the way, that day.
I still don't get me started, Jeff. But yes, it is.
Yeah, Drew.
I've got Kansas State. That's September 23rd. It's an away game. It's UCF's first game.
Very first Big 12 game. That's right.
Very first game in the Big 12 against what arguably could be the best team they play. This is the reigning conference champion. So UCF's getting a baptism by fire here. On the road against the reigning conference champs as their first ever conference game. Good luck, son. Hope you survive the experience.
I think Big 12, right?
Yeah, I think a strong showing there could really springboard this team to really set up the next game at home against Baylor to celebrate the decade, celebration of the win against them in the Fiesta Bowl. I mean, if you can just, if UCF somehow starts 4-0 going into that game, watch out. And that's going to rival Cincinnati game day loudness.
I was surprised, Drew. I thought you were looking forward to the game at Kansas and your boy Lance Leipold.
From a fanboy experience, yeah, but I've got to sometimes take the fandom out when I'm doing the analysis. I think it's better for the team on that K-State game.
Is he capable of that, Drew or Kyle? I mean, is he really capable of that?
He can be at times. It involves nothing with Ohio, so there's that. But listen, I thought he was going to pick Baylor because that's the game I might miss. So there's that.
Bryson, what do you
Kyle, I'll totally miss you.
Bryson, what's the game you got circled?
I think the game for me, I'm going to go a little bit out of the way and go for and I'm going to circle November 18th in Lubbock, Texas at Texas Tech. We have seen before, and this is why. We have, I believe, I don't know if we alluded to this the last time we talked about the schedule, like way back when, but November 18th in Lubbock is going to be cold. It is more than likely than not going to be a cold one. And I still remember to this day, UCF visiting SMU when that was extremely cold. And it was a very close game. UCF players, they were just practicing in heat advisory weather, like heat advisory heat levels today. And so you're expecting them to go to the complete other end of the spectrum against a team that we've been saying this episode is the dark horse of the Big 12. I know we're going to circle all these other games like Kansas for Leipold, Baylor for the anniversary, Oklahoma for Dylan Gabriel, but it's games like Texas Tech that can sneak up on them, kind of like how Navy's always been a thorn of our side, or Tulsa's always been a thorn in our side in the age of the American. I think Texas Tech is the team to keep an eye out for, because I think that's the team that could kind of assume that role if we're not careful about it.
Well, I wouldn't undersell Texas Tech at all, especially at home. They're probably the toughest home team outside of Oklahoma on a multi-year basis. This team is, Lubbock is a really hard place to play.
It's hard to get to, and then when you get there, the place is a madhouse.
I mean, that only works in their favor.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think that's a fair game to circle, not necessarily for the reasons Bryson said so, but I mean, it's definitely a game to watch out for, because this is a game you have to take really seriously. It's not like going to Nippert where it's some small 40,000 seat stadium with a bunch of quiet Ohioans.
I was about to say it's starting to sound kind of like Tulane at that point. Anyway.
This Lubbock, Texas has a history of massive upsets done by Texas Tech. Yeah. So I think circling them is a very fair thing to do, Bryson.
Aside from the Baylor game, our first Big 12 home game, which will be a zoo. I'm telling you right now, it's
rightly so, gentlemen.
Zoo.
Yes,
I'll park early.
I'm really looking forward to October 28th against West Virginia. Home game. It's after the trip to Oklahoma, before the trip to Cincinnati. West Virginia's kind of been struggling a little bit. They are not picked high within the Big 12. In fact, the preseason media poll picked the Mountaineers dead last.
Don't tell their fans that, Jeff Sharon.
Never tell their fans that.
They're going to warm up their John Denver.
Keep your couches inside.
Hide your kids. Hide your couches.
Now, but that could be a real springboard coming off of that back-to-back at Kansas, at Oklahoma. I don't think that's going to be easy. That's a big that's a hard stretch in the schedule. You come back if you can beat West Virginia at home, and that's homecoming too. You go to Cincinnati, familiar territory. Home for the space game against Oklahoma State. UCF's never lost a space game. That tough game that you mentioned at Texas Tech, Bryson, but then after that, home for Houston. So there's a chance here for UCF to get off to finish strong in their final season, or in their final season. What? First season in the Big 12. Here, that's so.
And their final season as the 14th member of the Big 12.
Well, that brings me to our next point, which is that we're going to do a quick little. We got last 5 minutes here before we wrap up. Little grab bag of topics that we wanted to talk to you. Obviously, we haven't talked about Big 12 expansion yet. Holy smokes. The four corner schools actually did it. They're coming to the Big 12 in 2024. We found out yesterday UCF will not get a full share of revenue from the conference until 2025-26.
Which the original plan.
Despite what Mac Rose, the AD at Baylor, initially said in a radio interview with 365 Sports. By the way, Drew, he was talking in that interview like he was at like some other sporting event, like maybe his kid's game, and he didn't seem like he was entirely focused on what they were talking about.
Yeah, he seemed a little loose there.
Yeah, but nonetheless, either way,
but the rationale makes sense though.
Well, yeah, I mean 2024, 2020, because these are UCF, BYU, Houston, Cincinnati, non-A5 schools coming in, and that was
they're ramping up. They're ramping up on their revenues. So
and will be for the TV deal with the new TV.
Yeah,
deal.
and then you have the teams from the Pac-12 who are used to being budgeted at a certain level. They at least get to stay similar. They don't have to take massive cuts and stuff like that. I think it actually helps the conference as a whole by doing it that way, so that there's less. They can mitigate damage from the transition of one conference to the other.
Drew, real quick, which of the four corner schools are you most excited about?
I from an all sports standpoint, I like Arizona just because of their basketball history. From a football standpoint, it's Utah. I mean, they're the best football program coming into that right now. They've had multiple years of being the top of that. It's going to take Colorado some time to rebuild. I mean, it's exciting with Deion Sanders. I don't know how long he's going to be there. If Florida
State implodes, I would not be surprised if we never see Deion Sanders.
Yeah, if Florida State opens up, I mean, he's on the first flight to Tallahassee.
Not so fast. Mike Norvell's doing a pretty good job there so far. It's going to be at least 2 more years.
Yeah, those boosters have an itchy trigger finger, though.
Florida State boosters are notorious.
That's why I said 2 years.
Of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
Oh, so are the Seminoles themselves, but Eric Lopez is not here to defend himself.
Yeah, I know. That's why we're doing that.
Well, regardless of a presence of one prime Sanders or not, Colorado, I think, could still be is something that I'm very interested in, if only because I think the idea of a black and gold brother, a black and gold rivalry would be kind of nice. I mean, there are.
Oh, sorry. Well, Bryson, I was going to say like the one I'm most excited for is Arizona State, believe it or not, because there are a lot of parallels between us and them.
So if we win, if UCF defeats Arizona State, can they replace their president with someone who's less of a Pac-12 homer?
Well, I don't know, but that's also going to be fun. Kyle, what about you?
I think Arizona's the correct answer. Listen, while Drew wants to make me puke about bringing up Utah.
It was football only. Arizona's
I know. I'm not saying that was your answer like you said them.
I'm not down on Arizona. I will say that.
Yeah, no, yeah, not to imply you were, Jeff, certainly. And listen, the Sun Devils are cool. That's a great mascot. I got no problem with it. They had Herm Edwards as a coach at one point and fired him in the end zone. That's a whole other question. Punchline's this, though, guys. I think the full sport concept, Drew is absolutely correct. And at the end of the day, listen, you don't want me talking about Utah unless you really like the movie My Cousin Vinny and bringing up Utes all the time. I'm just saying, like Bryson is a Ute on this show. Yeah. Anyways, no, listen.
You tried too hard on that one, Kyle. Sorry. No.
Listen, My Cousin Vinny is always appropriate to bring up. You're the problem.
It's not that you brought it
He's
up.
not
it's
arguing that
how.
you're wrong, that he's the problem.
Right. I will say this about Arizona, Tucson, beautiful. Really looking forward to the first time we go out there. You know, I want to travel out there. I want to go catch the Boneyard at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base out there, and the Pima Air and Space Museum. All y'all know that I'm a huge aerospace nerd. That is like, that's one of the pilgrim sites, right there. Let's see. Let's talk real quick about some rule changes this year in college football. Not that many, but I think they will be quite impactful. For one thing, running clock. Outside of the last 2 minutes of every half, the clock will not stop to reset the chains after a first down. Used to happen all throughout the game. Now it's only going to happen in the final 2 minutes. Kyle, does this help UCF, hurt UCF? How?
Ooh, that's wow. I wasn't ready for that. I would say that would, let's see, stopping the clock on the moving of the chains. I would think that actually hurts UCF if they continue to run as much. If they, I'll put it this way: that option to control the clock, or rather keep clock, I think works for the offense, but against the defense, it's hard for me to really answer that. But
if the clock is running outside of 2 minutes,
right,
and you're running the ball, that works in your favor
because you're shredding it more. That's true,
right? Because you're more times running.
So to that extent, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, if Gus Malzahn is what he is, being able to ride the throttle, as said, and if we are to believe that the O-line depth and the gelling of the offensive line is coming along at the rate that Tylen Grable would have us believe from what he said earlier today before this was recorded, which you can see on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel, then yeah, I would think grinding up that clock's a factor. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome. Drew, what do you think?
This definitely does not hurt UCF at all. UCF's offense is not designed to be hurt by this. This hurts slow-moving offenses, and UCF's going to be working with a lot of speed. So I don't think this is really going to affect UCF all that much. And Gus Malzahn pretty much intimated the same, that it's not really a big deal, and I don't think it's going to be.
A couple other ones that we'll just mention here real quick. Outlawing consecutive timeouts. Can't call back-to-back timeouts. Teams
I'm cool with that.
Kickers. I'm very cool with that. I'm surprised they haven't done it yet. I'm surprised they're only doing it now.
I thought it was a rule. Yeah.
I know.
I'm totally cool with that.
I think is it in the NFL? It's a rule, Kyle.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's probably where we got confused. And then also a new rule so that a first or third quarter will not be extended for an untimed down if the quarter ends on a defensive penalty. In that case, the down will be clocked in the next quarter. Well, that makes sense. But, I mean, I think the NFL does that too, right? There's no one-time down after the first and third. There is at the end of a half.
Right, which is obviously a different thing. I think that's correct.
Yeah.
I'm not fresh on that.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's kind of a non-issue either. I don't think that's going to really be a
That's
big
just
deal.
this game administration thing. Last but not least, Bryson Turner, you get the honors. We want to talk about some of the things that UCF has discussed about improving the in-stadium experience, which we're pretty excited for, obviously, and for all kinds of different reasons. But what's the big thing? We've got, for example, cashless venue. That's going to be big. New fan experience social media accounts. Upgraded lighting with the LED lighting and additional connectivity throughout the stadium. Drew, you mentioned this before. Data connectivity on wireless devices has always been a problem at the bounce house.
Watching me try to connect for the night shift after the game is such a
well, is this? I mean, we haven't. This is going to be put to the test pretty quick, isn't it?
Well,
right,
I have to put an asterisk on it because, from what I understand, only AT&T is currently on it, and they're going to be expanding beyond that over time. So I don't think every carrier is part of this yet, or at least that's what when they were installing it. That's what they said. I don't know, maybe that's changed since, but at least if you have AT&T, your connectivity should improve. In theory,
Interesting.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Bryson?
Let's put it this way. That has been my biggest complaint the bounce house just at all is the internet connection. So I'm really glad that they're addressing it now. I'm also very happy for some of the fans inside. I'm reading through some of the stuff, and they're now going to apparently be offering veggie wraps at concessions now and churro bites. So I'll be very. So if you're a fan in there and you want a snack, it looks like you got some more offerings there. So
hey, food options matters.
Yeah, like I want to be able to eat. If I'm a fan, I want to eat at the stadium, and I happen to be, watching my sugar. A veggie wrap's a good thing.
In the release in July, by the way, Drew, just to clarify what you said AT&T is the installer, and additional carriers are expected at a future date, but they were not clear about that.
Right. So I don't know if things have changed, but when they first announced it, they were the only carrier called out. So
okay. The lighting, Bryson. So is this the lighting that they're like you see where like they score a touchdown night and like we had that at the Guardians where everything would go down and flash green and light all over the place? If something went down like that, I'm thinking that's what I'm thinking that's what we're gonna do, right?
I would think
they haven't even told me about how this stuff is gonna work, just to give you an idea of how under wraps this is.
Because think about this, because if you remember way back in before I became an undergrad, they tested the touchdown cannon to come back, and so I'm wondering if maybe the general idea of what the fan experience is going for is that they're trying to really upgrade the fan experience from that perspective. And so not only do you have the cannon coming back for the audio, the auditory experience, but then you have the visual experience with the LED lights. Now, with that said, considering that, I think having that for night games will certainly be very, very helpful.
Have they confirmed the cannon?
So they were testing it. So I know they were testing it. I think the intent is they intend on doing that. So if anything is so I haven't heard anything.
We'll find out opening night. I know that.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. If your coach is known for saying boom all the time, how the hell do you not have the cannon?
The NIMBYs.
I don't know. There could be any sort of administrative issues involved.
Remember when they built the stadium.
I bet Gus is pro cannon. I'm just throwing it out.
Well, I mean, anyone in the stadium should be pro cannon. It was the people who lived outside the stadium that didn't like it. The NIMBYs, the not in my backyards. Yeah,
Susan.
good old Susan.
Yeah,
that was why the cannon was shelved. But I just want to they got to be careful with this whole LED thing. I have two words for you: epileptic seizure. They got to be really careful on how they handle the changing of the lights. Avoid like the flashing lights, because the last thing you want is something like that happening in your stadium.
Well, this is from the release from July. The system will significantly improve lighting in both the in-stadium and TV fan experience as the number of light fixtures has increased by almost 50%. It gives UCF the ability to use a dynamic scene control system with color and flickering lights to enhance the game day show.
Gotta be careful with that.
Also added is egress lighting for the exterior of the stadium. That's an underrated thing. Like at night, when you're walking out of the stadium, it is dark.
Oh man, I think I still have a picture on my phone of Kyle and I walking out of the stadium at like midnight, and
we walk out 4 hours after the game's done.
Still,
because we.
I'll tell you what else it's going to do. This is going to help out UCF Athletics power bill. And you remember which game was it that the lights went out right before the half? Do you guys remember that one?
Ooh.
Was it Cincinnati?
No, it wasn't Cincinnati.
It might have been Memphis. I can't remember. It was. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, but it was in the Gus era. I know that.
Happened at the Pro Football Hall of Fame game this past week. The lights went out.
I didn't see that. It happened.
Yeah.
I mean, the jokes write themselves.
Oh, totally.
But
I mean,
what? This actually solves that problem.
Call for a brownout anyway.
I didn't, but seriously, on the flip side, this actually solves that problem, because you don't have to wait forever for those bulbs to recharge and refresh.
Right.
LEDs, you have the slight delay of the electricity going through, and then they're lit. That's it.
Yeah.
So I think that would actually help against those untimely delays that could happen.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way. Let's put it this way. There's a very big push from UCF to really modernize the bounce house and make it like as state of the art as they possibly can get it, while having it still retain the character that has made it a very tough place to play.
I'm going to be honest with you, man. You can't put the two together. The bounce house by design is not state of the art, and that's part of its charm. Is it's not, and the only way to make it even closer to state of art is to take away the things the fans like about it.
I object to that statement. There are parts of it that are indeed quite state of the art. There are parts of it that not. The parts of it that are state of the art are continuing to get updated. The parts that we all know and love over the past 16 years, those will never. I feel like that'll never really go away.
Drew, are you thinking that's
going to have
lipstick?
to at some point?
Are you calling that lipstick? Is that what you're doing, Drew?
Well, I mean, I can go through the laundry list of the things that they need work on, but we don't have enough time left in this show.
We've got enough time.
The next show to handle it.
I mean, let's put it this way: when you start, as someone who got his minor in sport business management, I've been hearing about this nonstop, and so just to kind of see a lot of this stuff happen here about them going cashless, and that they now have like a grab and go snack and drink option on the concourse, which is really interesting. Just to see these innovations happen at the bounce house is just very intriguing to see, because not only are we moving up the hierarchy in the on-field product, but we also want to make sure we move up in the off-field product as well, and this is steps to doing that.
I would say that's more catching up than it is getting ahead of the curve, though.
Well,
I was going to say, we're all going to take a spin on the last day of August 31st, UCF against Kent State. By the way, one last little word here before we get going. According to CBS, we mentioned the over-under 7 wins, minus 115. And again, playing Kansas State, Baylor, and Oklahoma in the first half of the schedule will test UCF's mettle, but there are winnable games down the stretch if the Knights can survive the physical barrage. That's going to be, I think, the big thing going through. But we will be here every step of the way through it. Look at this, guys. We got the show done in, well, not under an hour, but around an hour. You can follow us on the Night Shift Podcast, which is downloadable on every device. Just look for the Night Shift Podcast. We upload this to Spotify, so that's the fastest way to get our most recent shows. We're going to go back to our normal weekly schedule, just kind of shooting the breeze as we are about UCF sports all throughout. We'll also get going on Black and Gold Banneret in the next few weeks, talking about soccer, men's and women's, as well as volleyball. Jenny Maurer taking over UCF volleyball. Women's soccer, preseason ranked number 24 for in the Big 12, also in the Big 12. And also men's soccer, very interesting, playing in the Sun Belt Conference with a couple of other Power 5 programs as well. Follow us each individually. We are on Twitter. Excuse me, we're not on Twitter. We are on X.
No, we're on Twitter.
So freaking stupid.
Everyone, I love how everyone is agreeing that we're just not going to call it X.
Yeah. UCF Banneret _SBN. We are on Threads at Black and Gold Banneret, all one word. And we're getting a little bit better at that. We're also on Instagram, YouTube as well. Check out the YouTube channel like Kyle and Bryson were talking about for all the latest content from the media availabilities that UCF has been so gracious in providing us, and some of which you heard on this very show as well. You can follow me individually at Jeff_Sharon. Follow Bryson at It's Bryson Turner. Kyle is at the SOTG for the student of the game. Andrew is at Statboy Drew. Also, don't forget all of our other comrades here at Black and Gold Banneret and the Night Shift, including Eric Lopez, Elo, everybody, all the guys who've been helping us out with photography all throughout the year. We're going to be getting that going as well as we finish up here. So, for all of us here at the Night Shift Podcast and Black and Gold Banneret, my name is Jeff Sharon. Thank you so much for listening. Drew, Kyle, Bryson, thank you once again. Let's get football season underway, boys. Here we go.